don't fill your resume with irrelevant skills. Indeed had this feature where you could list all the certifications, all the licenses, all the skills, and it created this laundry list of skills that looked something like, I have a driver's license. you know, I know how to file things. I mean, it was like really basic things that don't need to be on your resume. If it matters to the position that you're in, list them. If it's just life skills that everybody has and people are assuming that you have it, don't bother. This is the Back to Work podcast for stay-at-home moms who are thinking about going back to work but terrified about what that means. Maybe you're facing resume gaps or a few outdated skills, not to mention juggling kids, life, and well, everything. We get it. We've been there and we've got you. We know this isn't just about getting work. It's about finding a job that fits you and your life. Every week, you'll hear tips, advice, and stories, all designed to help you go back to work. Hit the subscribe button and never miss an episode. Welcome to Back to Work. This is the podcast for stay-at-home moms going back to work and aren't quite sure where to start. So we always say to start here with us. I'm Carrie.
I'm Angie.
And we talk about all things about moms going back to work. So this episode, we are going to take a little bit of a different tack. We've been talking about kind of the logistics about going back to work, about childcare and household duties and just the emotions around going back to work. And we were kind of in the middle of doing a series of the myths. That's a difficult word to say. The myths that moms think when they're going back to work. So we've done a couple episodes on that. So go back and listen to those if you haven't listened to those. But today we're going to put that on hold for a minute and we're going to talk about kind of the nuts and bolts of going back to work. So we're going to start with your resume, which is something, in my opinion, in my experience, when you realize that you're going to go back to work, when you want to go back to work, you think about your resume and you think about all the things that you want to put in your resume, and it makes total sense in your head. And then you sit down to write it and you don't know where to start. I've had that happen to me so many times. I'm like, okay, where do I even start?
Or you
Um,
start Googling resumes and you see 15 different layouts that you could select
right.
and, uh,
Right. Yeah. And it just becomes overwhelming and confusing. And then you just don't even know where to start. So we're going to talk about kind of the basics of what should be in a resume and what shouldn't be in a resume. And for those of you who don't know, my background, as well as being a life coach, my career background is human resources. And so I've been in human resources for almost 20 years now. And I've seen a lot of resumes and I've done a lot of recruiting. I've also have experience writing my own resume and see what works for me. So I want to kind of talk about some of the basic things that I see when I'm looking at resumes and what works and what doesn't. Now, keep in mind, this is kind of a generalized summary of what will work and what won't, right? So it kind of depends on your industry. Angie and I were just having this conversation. So in Angie's industry, teaching, a cover letter is super important
yeah.
for people that are coming through, candidates that are coming through.
So I probably should let people know that I'm retired from education, but the last
Yes.
11 years I was in administration. So was, doing a lot of that hiring and looked at a lot of resumes over those 11 years. And the cover letter in it for a teaching position or an administration position is important. The hiring committees do look at those and put a lot of weight on those. So, which is different than what in Carrie's industry.
Yeah. And also, in my opinion, now, like I said, industries are different. You heard Angie use the word hiring committee, right? Not every company or industry has a hiring committee. It's usually just the hiring manager. But cover letters, in my opinion, don't really do a whole lot. I know people ask for them sometimes. I feel like if you're not asked for it, don't bother, because the way that the ATS systems work,
What's ATS?
Sorry, ATS is an applicant tracking system, and that is the system that everybody uses. Like when you put your resume in Indeed, it goes to that company's applicant tracking system. And the way that it comes through, if you have a cover letter and a resume, it will come through as two separate documents. And most of the time, people are just looking at the resume. Now, to
Mm,
get around that, you would just make it all one file.
mhm.
But again, in my opinion and my experience, people just kind of scroll past that and go right to the resume because they want to know what it is that you bring to
Experience.
the table in terms of experience.
But
But
that's good to know. That's good to know if you're going back into and maybe it's the difference between a human services kind of organization versus a more what's the word I'm looking for? Like
corporate,
industrial, corporate
yeah,
position.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, I would say that's probably true. The slant would be towards, yeah, towards the more service oriented positions, but not everybody's going to want it because one of the big things that I think people need to remember is that it all comes down to people who are looking at your resume. Most of the times, it is the hiring manager that's looking at the resumes.
Mm,
And they're going to look for things that they want to see. So when you're thinking about putting your resume together, think about the fact that a person will be looking at it, right? Forget about the system. I know people talk about keywords and, optimization and all those things. None of that matters. It comes down to the person who's looking at your job or looking at your resume for the job that they're trying to fill. And when it comes to people, if people are confused about what they're looking at for any reason, they're going to skip over you and they're going to go to the next person because they don't want to think about it. They want to look at a resume and they want to know that that person has the most relevant skills to bring them in for an interview. And that's all they're looking for. So I have some, does that make sense, Angie?
yeah.
You're kind of listening to this as somebody who's not, in this field, so I'll use you as my barometer.
Uh,
What I say just
that's
makes
what I'm
sense.
here for. That's what I'm here for.
So I have some do's and don'ts, and they're generalized and they're simple. Now, one of the things that I offer in my back to work program is a resume revamp. That is just one of the things that I can help you with. So, if you're thinking that you want help with that, reach out to me. I'll put some links in the show notes and I can definitely help you with that. But just to talk about some do's and don'ts, we just talked about it a little bit. You want to keep your resume simple. Now, when I say simple, I don't mean not detailed, but think about the format. My preference is the Indeed format, and I know they're doing it differently now, but go back like 6 months ago. It is easy to look at and it's in order in the way that you want to see a resume. There's lots of templates out there.
Yeah.
Either you can buy them or you can have them on Microsoft Word, and they're going for like Flash. They're going for graphic design type resumes. Okay. Don't fall into that trap. People are looking at the words. You're not going to get a call because your resume is flashy, but it doesn't have the skills that they're looking for. So don't get caught up in the graphic design of it. Just keep it simple. You want it easy to read. You want a font that's easy to read. You want the spacing not too tight so it's easy to read. So all of those things really matter because remember, depending on the job that you're applying for, that person could be looking at 100 different resumes. And if they come across a resume that is difficult to read, I guarantee you they're not even going to look at it because it's not worth it. There's so many others to look at. So you just want to make sure that it's easy to read. Another thing is when you're listing the job that you're coming from, just have a little synopsis about what that company is. Especially if you're going for kind of a niche industry, nobody knows unless you're working for like Pepsi, right? Or Target or Walmart. Nobody knows what your company does unless you tell them. So that's the other thing is does this person have experience in this industry that I'm looking for? Because sometimes that matters and sometimes it doesn't. but
Uh-huh.
you want them to know where you came from. So just a one sentence thing about what your company did so they have a reference point of your skill set within that industry. Also, keep it professional. Okay? And again, that goes back to formatting and not being too flashy. You want to make sure that everything looks polished. So, for example, some of the resumes that I look at will have one sentence under their title about what they did at that job. That's not exactly polished, right? You want to make sure that you're listing your skills in a way that look professional, not just one or two words or one sentence. You want to keep it professional. And that includes your email, which a lot of people overlook. Don't have a cutesy email. If you have to, create a separate email for your resume that is professional. Typically, your name or your first initial and your last name or the other way around. Another little thing about your email is make it your own email. Sometimes people have shared emails, like a married couple might have a shared email for whatever
Yeah.
reason. It's easier when the school is contacting you instead of giving a bunch of different emails, you just give the one.
Mhm.
And so that makes sense. But when it comes to your resume, make sure it's your own email. And the reason that I say that is because when you're looking at a resume, when a hiring manager or recruiter is looking at your resume, there is this unconscious lack of trust when you see something that looks off. So if
Mhm.
you have an email that belongs to somebody else, or it's a cutesy, or it doesn't belong, it's not just yours, there's just this thing. It's just, you feel off about it. Why aren't they giving me their real email? Why aren't they, right? So
Right.
just make sure that your email is professional and typically your name works well. We all want to make sure that we have as much experience in our resume as possible to show people everything that we know. And I understand that. I do that as well. You want to make sure that you list all of your experience in there. However, there comes a point that some of your jobs, some of your older jobs that you have, are not relevant to the job that you are applying for. And so in those instances, just leave it off. Don't add it in there. So, for example, I used to work in human services in residential programs for kids before I went into HR. I also had an admin job in between there. Now, for a long time, I would put that on my resume because I would take skills from those jobs and make them relevant to the job that I was applying for, and it made sense. But at a certain point, it didn't make sense to keep those on there. And so I just take them off. I don't keep them on there. And that's perfectly fine. You're not hiding anything. You're not lying. It's just, it's not relevant to what you're applying to now. So don't be afraid to leave jobs off that are older. If it makes sense for you to leave them in, do it. But if not, just delete them. You don't need them. I want to go back to keeping your resume professional and back to the templates that are available for people. There are a lot of templates out there that keep a space for your profile picture. Don't do that. Do not include your picture in your resume. And I know that people can look at you on LinkedIn, and if you want people to see who you are, then put a LinkedIn link in your resume, but do not have your picture on your resume. And the reason I say this is there's a lot of unconscious bias out there. And it's not even just about discriminating in the sense that we all think about discriminating against minorities. It's, again, it comes down to people. And so if a hiring manager kind of gravitates towards a certain look of a person, again, it's not necessarily racial, then you could be eliminated from even being called in because they saw your picture and they just didn't like the way it looked. And so they go past you. Now, I know we talk about you can't discriminate and, everybody's equal and that is true. People are not supposed to discriminate. But I can tell you that it does happen. So you want to be careful of putting your picture in there. Again, if you want to put your LinkedIn profile in there, go ahead, but don't keep it in your resume. The other thing about not giving away too much information is a lot of the times I'll see people list their high school and the year that they graduated high school. You never want to put your graduation year of high school in your resume. And the reason for that is it can tell somebody what your age is. And even though that shouldn't matter, it can matter to a specific person. If they're looking for somebody who is of a certain age, then you're not going to get a call because they're going to say you're either too old or too young. They may not want to have a young person in there or an older person in there. Now, again, I speak from experience because I have had these conversations with managers and I have let them know that that's not something that we can consider when we're considering bringing in candidates. But the fact that they bring it up tells me that it's something that they consider. And so you have to be conscious of that. So you don't want to give away how old you are. There's no reason for it. I wouldn't even actually list the high school, especially if you have an associate's degree or a bachelor's degree or a master's degree. Just list the last degree that you've had. You don't need a laundry list. People can assume that you have a bachelor's degree if you have a master's degree. So you don't need to list out every single college that you've gone to or the high school that you've gone to if you have a higher degree. Does that make sense, Angie? I know I've been
Yeah, and
talking a
that's
lot in
good
this
advice
one.
because your education can take up a lot of space.
Can.
So,
It really can. It really can. I'll have a summary of this in the show notes too, because I feel like I'm a little bit all over the place, but so you might have to listen to this a couple times, but the things that I'm putting in
don't make
here
it
are
confusing.
I know I'm making it confusing. This is a terrible resume. I'm sorry. The things that are in here again are generalized, but they are the top important things that you need to think about when you're thinking about a resume. So, talking about what not to do in a resume, don't fill your resume with irrelevant skills. Indeed had this feature where you could list all the certifications, all the licenses, all the skills, and it created this laundry list of skills that looked something like I have a driver's license. Um you know, I know how to file things. I mean, it was like really basic things that don't need to be on your resume. If it matters to the position that you're in, list them. If it's just life skills that everybody has and people are assuming that you have it, don't bother. It makes it look like you're trying to embellish your resume, and that's not what you want. Again, that goes back to the trust piece. Why is this person trying to sell me on the fact that they have all these basic life skills? I would assume that they have these basic life
Right,
skills. Why are they
exactly.
pointing them out? So, and that's all unconscious. I do believe that. It is unconscious. People aren't doing that on purpose, but it's something to be aware of. All right, so let's give it a little rundown. Keep your
Okay.
resume simple. Don't make it confusing. Okay? Keep it professional. Use an email that's professional. Don't list your irrelevant skills. Please don't put your picture in your resume. Please don't put your picture
Don't
in your resume. I'm
don't do
begging
it.
you. And don't list your high school graduation year. It's okay to list your college graduation year. And I know that could speak to age too, but the idea behind that is people can go to college at any time in their life. So it's not really a
Right,
good indicator of your age.
right,
It could be, but it doesn't have to be.
right.
It's okay to do that, but don't list your high school graduation year. Remove your old jobs if they're not relevant to the position that you are applying for. And also, older jobs speak to your age too. If you had a job in, you know, 2000, I mean, it sounds so
Mhm.
funny to say 2000 and that's like
Yeah,
25 years
well,
ago.
that's not
But I mean, I'm seeing resumes from people and they're listing their jobs from 1988. Okay.
yeah,
I know how old this person is or I
right,
have a good
right,
idea. And for me, for the job that I was recruiting for, that made no difference. But when I see that, I know that they're going to have issues finding a job because
mhm,
they're they're going to say you're too old. And I hate to say that, but it's
You
just the reality of it. It's just the
right,
reality of it. And people need to understand that. There's what managers and companies should do, what they're supposed to do, and what they actually do. So I've seen both
right.
sides of that. And I'm here to tell you that some of this stuff makes a difference to some people. I think that was everything that I wanted to list. Let's talk about relevant skills for a second. When you're putting your resume together, there are AI tools that can help you to make your resume sound polished and help you put your thoughts together when you're writing your resume. But if you don't have practice writing a resume, if you're not careful, it can come across as canned responses that people are going to know are AI generated, and that's going to have the opposite effect, okay? So, if you're using I think that's fine, but you got to be careful to make sure that it doesn't sound like AI. You want to use AI as a reference point, not as the end game. You want to make sure that it's still in your voice. You just want to use it as a helping hand. You don't want to just copy and paste it and plop it right into your resume as is, because that will look forced and it just won't look right. So again, if you need help with I this is one of the things that I do in Back to Work. I can help you revamp your resume. I can show you, what it is that you're doing really well and the other things that you might need to just be more aware of. I can help you do that. So when you go to put your resume out there, it's going to look polished, it's going to look genuine, it's going to look like you belong in that job. So I have ways that I do that, and so I can help you with that. So I'll put the link in the show notes for that if anybody's interested. Do you think there's anything I missed, Angie? Is there something that you're
No,
thinking
I
of?
think
Like, oh,
that
I wish she mentioned that.
no, I think it's a pretty, thorough. I mean, the things that you're talking about are basics that it actually makes your job writing your resume easier. If you think about those things that only include what's most important. Put the word that one page idea that the resume is one page.
Yeah, you
That
don't have
means
to do
that
that.
right, the economy of words, like how what words you choose is important in terms of if you're telling people what you can do for them in regards to that particular job.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. The one page resume, it's a balance, right? It
Mhm.
doesn't need to be one page. You don't have to cut your experience down to make it fit on one page. Now, you don't want it to be 5 pages. But
No,
if it's 2 pages, it's okay. It's fine. It's
and if
fine
you
if it's two
followed your
pages.
tips to keep it to the relevant skills, the relevant job experience, the latest education, or certificates that are directly related, they can find out more about who you are through other means.
Hmm. Yeah, exactly. I mean, LinkedIn, again, give them your LinkedIn profile. There's nothing wrong with that. That's fine. And they can find out a little bit more about you there if they're interested. There is one last thing that I didn't have on here that I want to highlight because it just came to me as part of submitting your resume. Make sure that it is a PDF file. Do not upload a Word document or a text file. I've seen that as well, which just makes it look like,
Garbledy-gook.
yeah, exactly. A PDF is the best format. Even though it says it will take a Word doc, like you're able to upload a Word doc, don't do it. Use a PDF. And here's the reason why. Applicant tracking systems, well, there's a couple reasons. One, applicant tracking systems work better with a PDF. I can't tell you how many people send in a Word document and it literally will not open. I can't even see it. It won't open.
Yeah, that's a
And
problem.
it's a problem, right? So that means that I have to download the resume and then open it up to look at it. Most people aren't going to do that. They're just going to say, never mind, and they're going to go
Right.
right on by. For that reason, don't do it. For another reason, sometimes when you upload a Word document and it does let you open it, the quality, either the quality isn't as good, it's
Mhm.
blurry, it just doesn't come through it doesn't look professional, and it can shift it around. It allows the system to kind of like shift the words around. So for example, if you
Right.
had everything on one page and then you started the next page with education, sometimes when you open it, it will shift part of the last paragraph into the next page and then start your education. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
little
Yeah,
things
so
like
the
that.
format it weird.
Yes, exactly. So just avoid all of that and upload a PDF because it will eliminate all of that. A PDF will open just as it's supposed to. It will look professional. It won't be shifted around. It's just the easiest way. So that is the last thing I will leave you with. All right. I'm going to leave it there. We have other episodes coming up. Next week, we're going to talk about the gap in your resume. And so we'll get more into that. But for now, we're going to leave it with use a PDF, keep it professional, keep it simple, and we'll see you next week. Thank you so much for listening. Your support means the world to us. If this episode resonated with you, we invite you to subscribe to the podcast, share with another mom, and explore the links in the show notes. Remember, you and all moms deserve support on your journey back to work.